stonework here. Are you guys able to see my screen still? Yeah? Okay, great. I just lost the green line around my screen, so I just want to make sure. Okay, let's draw these rectangular borders, and I'll show you how to do that really simply. I'm just going to use the rectangle tool. Again, all the tools on the right-hand side, the tools that have the shortcut listed in brackets. So for rectangle tool, I can just hit M, and automatically I'm in the rectangle tool. So I can just drag and drop in that rectangle. Okay, so now if I just zoom in a little bit closer, I can draw another rectangle because I'm still in the rectangle tool. But actually what I want to do is I want to show you how to duplicate that again. So I'm going to hit escape to get out of the rectangle tool, and that's going to bring me to the selection tool by default. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option and duplicate that again. And as you can see, Illustrator wants to make it sticky. So it gives me these like automatic guides and my mouse kind of sticks to those guides. And what that lets me do is align things in the drawing roughly where Illustrator thinks I want them aligned. But if you want to align something not based on existing kind of center points or sidelines in Illustrator, there's a useful tool, set of tools under ruler, which I can show you. So if I go to, let's see, if I go to view rulers, show rulers, you can also hit Control R or Command R on a Mac to show rulers. That gives you the rulers on the sides of your drawing here. As you can see here, you see the number 6, 8, 7, 8, 8. See all that? From in there, you can click and pull out lines. So I just like clicked on the ruler, pulled out a line, and I dropped the line here, and that creates a guide. If you pull out a line from the left side, that creates these vertical guides. And if I pull out a line from the top, that creates these horizontal guides. So I'm actually going to create 2 horizontal guides so that I can use these horizontal guides to keep duplicating my squares and rectangles around this border here. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is pull out this rectangle so that it matches roughly what's in the drawing. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see what I have. I'm going to hold down Alt or Option on a Mac, and I'm going to reproduce, whoops. Okay, so see what I just did? I was going for the rectangle, but I accidentally moved the base map. Let's actually fix the base map into place so that I don't actually move it anymore. And I can do that by clicking the blank space next to the eye icon. That gives me a lock icon. So now if I click and drag on the base map, it actually won't move because it's locked into place, right? So now when I click here and I zoom in a little bit, I'm just clicking on the image of the rectangle I just drew, hold down Alt, and just like duplicate that along this line here. So pretty simple, right? And my line goes a little bit farther. I want to make sure they're all the same width. So I selected all 3 and I made sure that they're all kind of the same width there by shrinking the widths of those tiles. Okay, now let's multi-select them and create a unique layer. Let's call this border. And because as you can see, I've been drawing the border into the north arrow layer. Let's just move them up into the border layer. Okay? I saw a little bit of discussion in the chat about organizing things with layers. Do that. And as you get farther along in your career, you'll learn of the best naming conventions for these layers. For example, if you're working in AutoCAD drawings, a lot of people, put an L dash before all their layers just to know, okay, that this layer is in a landscape drawing. If it was A, it would mean architecture drawing, things like that. So you can figure out as you proceed how to best name your layers. I'm just going to keep it simple for now, though. Okay, so next thing I want to show you how to do is create curves in your boxes here, because as you can see, especially it's more clear if I go down to the bottom, here some of this tile work has curves in it. So I just copied some of my line work from above, and I'm going to show you how to emulate that curve now. I'm just going to start by increasing my rectangle size to that space in the base map, and I'm going to zoom in again using the Control+ tool. And as I'm close in like this, as you can see here, I have a extra little dot on the inside of my vector point. And if I click that dot and drag it in, I can actually change the rounding or the curvature of this rectangle here. But what it did, it controlled all of the corners of this rectangle. I don't want to do that. I just want to control one. So to control one, I actually just double click it slowly, not right. I just double clicked it, and that selected only that one curve. So what I was able to do now was have a rectangle with only one curve, one of its corners that was curved. So you can kind of do the same thing here now. You have your one rectangle that's the right size. You can create your lines and your border based on that placement of that rectangle. Okay, I won't show you too much more regarding that. You can kind of see how that can be done, right? Now, what if you want to do an odd shape that's not a rectangle? What if you want to do, for example, some of these lines up here? It's quite a complicated shape. I'm just going to trace this line here using the line tool, the line segment tool. Right, so I'm just going to click my first. Whoops, if I click, I can specify the distance of the line as we did for the scale. But actually what I want to do is drag and drop to my second point. So I want this roughly to be exactly down of my first point, and I can kind of draw freely. But if I hold down Shift, that makes my line sticky along the orthogonals. So everything from like 0 to 180 to 360, 270, and then also the 45-degree angles in between those main points. So I'm just holding down Shift so that my line is sticky, and then there we go. I'm going to use the pen tool to keep drawing this line. So if I click the pen tool here, or I can just hit P on my keyboard to access the pen tool, and I hover over the anchor point on the line, as you can see under the pen tool, I get a line. See how it transfers from a star to a line? That means I'm going to be continuing the line that of this anchor point. So I'll click, and I'm going to specify the second point, and I'm going to hold down Shift again to make sure that my line is exactly 0 degrees to the drawing, or 90 degrees to the other line. And I'm going to keep holding on Shift as I continue to draw the other points in this shape. There we go. And now it's a complete circle, or not circle, but enclosed shape, and I hit Enter. Sometimes if you're still in the drawing and in the middle of drawing your shape, you can just click the selection tool or hit V on your keyboard to get out of drawing that shape. So let's go in now, go a little bit closer, and let's add a curve here. I'm going to use the direct selection tool. So in Illustrator, there's two arrows, actually. There's a selection tool and the direct selection tool. The selection tool is black and the direct selection tool is white. The difference is the selection tool gives you, it treats the entire object you drew as one object. And when you select and move it, you move the whole object. Meanwhile, the direct selection tool lets you adjust the specific points within that object. Do you see that difference? So you see how these points here are transparent on the inside or white on the inside. That means it's not selected. Whereas this point here is blue on the inside. That means it is selected. If I click a different point, that point's selected and I can move that point. If I want to multi-select, if I multi-select any object, I hold shift and I can get 2 points now. So I can move 2 points in this drawing. So that's the big difference between the selection tool and the direct selection tool in Illustrator. So now that I have this direct selection tool, I just want to edit the curve on this one point. And just like I edited the curve on the rectangle below, I have this little dot here that I like drag and pull down to wherever I want it. So I get my curves. Okay, so I think using the line tool, the pen tool, and the rectangle tool, you're able to now trace this entire drawing. It's gonna take a little bit of work to do all this, so start. But as you get used to using these tools, it'll come really easy. So the next thing I want to show you how to do is to trace these trees. There's a couple different ways you can draw the trees, and I'll show you kind of my preferred method. But you can draw them stylistically however you feel. But again, make sure that you don't go overboard with how you stylize these trees, because sometimes people overdraw the vegetation in their drawings, and all you can see is the vegetation and not the space underneath. So make sure you find that balance in what you want to communicate in your drawings based on the level of detail you're using in your drawings. Okay, but before I show you how to draw the trees, do you guys have any questions on kind of this more basic line work? Tool is the curvature tool. If you click that, what that lets you do is already start drawing in curves. So as you saw, I could draw a polygon using just the regular pen tool and then turn the corners into curves. But if you want to draw straight into curves, you can using the curvature tool. And then again, like Illustrator is really forgiving. If I hit A to get the direct selection tool, I can turn this point from a curve into a corner again. So I can convert it up here. You see it says anchor point, convert to corner. I select that and this anchor point turns into a corner. This anchor point that's already a corner, I can convert into a curve, right? Everybody saw how to do that? So it's pretty forgiving. Once you figure out how to use the program more, you'll find these little buttons and tools that help you manipulate objects really quickly between what you want and what you're trying to do and what you have. Any more questions? How do I remove the background after? Again, I can just do that by turning off, toggling the visibility of the base map in layers. That's probably the best way to do it. So you're not deleting this, just hide its visibility, because you might want to access this data again later if you want to draw something else using the base map as a reference. I don't like to delete things out of my drawing unless I know I'm never going to use them again, but things like a base map, I just hide. Okay, so that's that. Actually, there's one more thing I want to talk about while we're here, and that's line weights. In this assignment, you're asked to produce a drawing that uses at least 3 line weights. And if we look at this other student example that was submitted in a previous year, you can see that they clearly use 3 line weights. The thickest one was kind of used around perhaps the structures. The next thickest one was used kind of around the vegetation. And then the thinnest one was kind of used around the material change in the pavers, is how I'm kind of deciphering it. So the big landscape elements like buildings and the big water fountain uses the thickest line, which makes sense to me since they have the most kind of mass and size when you're entering the space. And then in this park specifically, because the trees do have such a big impact, on the space, it does make sense to use the second thickest line, I think, for the vegetation. And then, yeah, the detailing in the pavers, it does make sense for that to be the lightest line because it kind of blends into the background. So I'd say this was a pretty good use of line weight. So if we wanted to emulate this a little bit in my drawing here, let's just draw a box around one of the buildings as an example using the rectangle tool. And as you can see, my line weight is 1 here in stroke. I can change that to, let's use 2 for this one, just so you can see how that line is actually thicker. And let's turn off the base map so you can more clearly see the thickness. Make sense? A good rule for line weights are doubling. Okay, it's kind of up to you what you want to do, but just make sure that there's like a clear differentiation in the line weights that you're using. And doubling sometimes is an easy way to make sure that there's a clear differentiation. So that only takes you so far though, because as you double a line, they get thicker and thicker and thicker, and sometimes it's too much weight. So use your keen designer eye to decide what the right differentiation is between the line widths. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do the trees now. And then after that, actually, is now a good time for a break, Nadia, or should I keep going? Okay, so let's do the trees now. Let's use the ellipse tool for the tree. Let's just do a single tree down here first. Again, I want it to be roughly a perfect circle. So I'm holding down the shift tool and I have my tree. So some people think this is enough for your trees. And again, it depends on what kind of detail you want to have in your vegetation. If you want to just show your trees as a perfect circle. But since the honey locust trees are so dominant in this space, I think it does make sense to have a little bit of detailing on them here. So I'm going to show you a really, really quick and easy way to get the almost identical detailing as what's in this existing drawing onto this circle here. So let's start again from scratch. Let's just go to my ellipse tool and let's draw this circle exactly where I want it. I'm holding down shift, so it's a perfect circle. And I'm going to hit V on my keyboard to get out of the circle tool, back to the click tool, and then I'm going to go up to effects, and I'm going to go to, okay, where is this? I'm going to go to roughen. So under distort and transform, I'm going to go to roughen. And as you can see, it's already manipulated the line around the tree. And if you play with these parameters a little bit here, like size, I'm going to change it to 2. And I'm going to change the detailing to just something a little bit higher. And as you can see, it looks a little bit more like a tree, right? And the more you play with it, the more detailing you can get. If I wanted to look like a conifer, maybe I'm going to have the size a little bit larger. And but since this is a deciduous tree, since these are honey locusts, really fine foliage, I'm going to keep the detailing really, really light. I'm not going to go overboard. So I'll probably do something like that for now. There's other features here you can play with. This is always really helpful. I always keep the preview on by default, especially when I'm doing light line work. If I turned preview off, as I was making the changes, I wouldn't be able to see them in real time, as you can see. So having the preview clicked helps you visualize things as you're making the changes. So I hit OK. So that looks pretty good for not a lot of effort, I guess. So if I want to change this width to 1.5, or actually 0.5, let's just do that. So it's much thinner. Maybe I want to change it to 1.5. That's fine too. Yeah, it's really useful there's a lot of flexibility there because you don't automatically see the fractions between the points offered, but you can still do that. Okay, great. So now I'm going to show you. There's another way you could draw these trees. You could use the pen tool and just like trace along the outside. And you can do that if you want something really specific. That's fine. And it doesn't take that long. So it's kind of stylistically what you want to do. While I'm here though, I just want to show you with the pen tool, I didn't show you this earlier. If you want to close a shape, to close a shape that you're drawing, you just have to hover over the first point of your line that you've been drawing, and you see how there's a little circle to the bottom right-hand corner of the pen tool. That means you're going to close the shape. So now you have a fully closed shape here, and that's, yeah, it's just helpful to know that like small change in the cursor means that you're going to be closing the shape. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to show you one more thing. As you can see, there's 5 trees down here. What if you want to show them in one shape? I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to multiply this one tree that I drew by holding down the Option or Alt key and just reproduce this tree multiple times. And then I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool to combine them into a single shape. So as you can see, I have all of these shapes selected. I'm going to go into Windows and go into Pathfinder. As you can see, this is the Pathfinder tool highlighted up here in my panel. I'm going to choose this one, which is Unite, because that lets me unite every single object that I have here into one object. Okay, so it united them all into one object. But what that also did was apply my roughen effect to that whole object. And because the object got bigger, I need to change my parameters. So if we go into appearance, and if you don't see appearance by default here, you can just go into Windows, Appearance, to get this window. And you can see that the roughen tool is applied here. Let's just decrease the size a little bit and the detailing a little bit of the roughen tool. So it's just less obstructive. Okay, and remember, it's good practice to have your layer naming convention and use your layers properly when you're doing your drawings. So let's just call this layer trees. And let's move using the this square tool. I don't even know what it's called, but you just like move it up to trees, and then the color changes of what you have selected because it moved up into a different layer, which is pink. Okay, so that's that. And again, you can use the ellipse tool to draw a little kind of dot. Hold Shift down to draw a perfect circle in the center. Zoom in, make sure it's there. Yeah. So I have my circle there, and I can fill the circle with black too, so it's not a hollow circle. And you can kind of reproduce that circle at every kind of center point for the tree that you want. Okay. Does it matter what order the layers are in? That's a question. It matters what layer what order the layers are in. Base map's at the bottom because I want it to appear at the bottom. For example, if I put trees under base map, the trees disappear behind the base map, right? So the order of the layers help you organize how you want your layers to be visualized on the screen. There are ways to override that, but I don't really suggest doing that for now because you get really confused. So I like to organize it based on layers. And then as you can see now, you have your trees, you have the start of your line work. You can turn off the base map and you can see your drawing clean without any of the base map there, again, using the visibility tool.